Hello and welcome to this video, Ansible Playbooks, Breakdown of Sections. So now that we have an understanding of YAML, we can start looking into the creation of playbooks. We'll talk about the common sections that we have in a playbook. We'll then use these sections as we walk through the creation of an example playbook that will update the message of the day on our CentOS hosts. We'll look at the use of variables and how variables can be manipulated from the command line. How handlers can be used for post-task execution. And how we can update the playbook so that it also targets our Ubuntu hosts in a dynamic way with the use of the when directive, leveraging facts about the system to derive when the distribution is CentOS or Ubuntu. Let's get started. We're here in revision 1 and we have an example skeleton playbook with the various sections commented for reference. In this example, our playbook starts with a dash. Essentially, a playbook can have a list of plays that can be executed, with each play having its own directives that we can see here indented. Whilst this example only has a single play, it's possible with the list notation to include many plays in a single playbook. Hosts, as the name implies, are the targets that our playbook will execute against. There's a variable section for our play variables, and we'll touch on this in this video, but we'll also be covering it in depth later on. Tasks are where we will focus, and these are the tasks that we'll execute in our play, and we're going to combine these with handlers. Roles are advanced features that we'll cover later on in the course. For now, let's dive in and look at the next revision, where we'll get hands-on. Stepping into revision 2. And if we perform an ls here, the Ansible config is our configuration file that, if you recall, takes second priority in comparison to other locations and will take precedence providing we're executing Ansible in the directory like we are now. We have a hosts file for our inventory, we have our playbook, and there's also a text file that we'll make direct use of within these examples. If we take a look at this, this is the message of the day that we're going to leverage on our CentOS host. And let's also have a look at the playbook that we have here. In the target section, we've listed our CentOS hosts. We also tell it to use the root user, which technically we don't actually need to do as we've configured this in our inventory, but we do this just to highlight that the target section can also be used for override parameters, such as those relating to the user. Under the task section, we have a list signified by the dash, a friendly name for the task, the module we're using being copy, and the parameters of source and destination. At this point, if you wish to customize the message of the day, you can edit the CentOS MOTD file, or you can keep this as it is. Let's execute our playbook using the Ansible-playbook command and our playbook YAML file. As with the ad hoc command, the colors correlate to the changes, in this case yellow, indicating a success with changes being made. Under the task section, you will see there is gathered facts. Recall, when we were looking at the setup module earlier, we mentioned that the setup module is executed during every play to gather facts about the relevant system. This, by the way, is why we have OK equals 2, as two tasks have been run even though we only defined one. The first task being the gathering of facts by the setup module, and the second task being the one that we defined. If we now log in to one of our CentOS systems using the portal, we can see the message of the day. Excellent. If we rerun the playbook, we should see the same, but this time with the success in green, as no changes are necessary. In the target section, we can define some other parameters. Valid parameters for the target section are become, connection, gather_facts, and many more. At the end, I'll be providing a resource link that highlights some of these. The gather_facts option correlates to what we were just talking about, where the setup module is being run for each playbook iteration for every host. As we're currently not using any facts that are gathered, let's turn this off. Prior to doing this, let's just time how long an execution takes. This is the previous command, and we're just going to add the word time at the very start. So we can see that took 5.795 seconds. Let's go into revision 3, and if we have a look at the playbook now, you can see there that we have gather_facts as false. Let's give this a try and see how long this takes. So we were able to reduce this to 4.212 seconds, and you'll also notice there that we have an OK equals 1 instead of OK equals 2, like we saw in the earlier example, as the setup's facts gathering is not being executed. In our playbook so far, we're successfully creating the MOTD, but it's not ideal. It's reliant on the CentOS_MOTD file existing. If you actually take a look at the copy module documentation online, you'll see that it has the option of using content instead of source. Let's give this a try. Go into revision 4, and if you ls here, we no longer have the CentOS_MOTD file. And if we bring up the playbook, you can see there that we have the entry for content, where we've actually written implicitly what we had as the default in the CentOS_MOTD file. If we try this, you'll see this has succeeded, and interestingly, it has changed the file, even though the content we used appears to be the same. Therefore, we would have expected this to have been green instead of yellow. There's an explanation for this. Log into CentOS 1 again. There we can see there's no new line at the end of the MOTD file. If we go back and into revision 5, and then we take a look at our playbook, what we've done is we've added the /n carriage return. Also, this string was a good contender for use as a variable, so we've specifically added it to the var section under the variable name of MOTD. To use the variable, we include it in double curly brackets in quotes. The curly brackets are part of the Ginger 2 templating system for variables. We'll be looking at Ginger 2 in greater detail later on in the course. For now, just be aware the double curly brackets are part of the Ginger 2 templating system, and we're referencing a variable. if we execute this again, it's made changes, and if we check back on CentOS 1, this is looking like how we would expect it to. While still in the same revision, a great thing about using variables is that these can be passed on the command line in a similar way to what we did with the Ansible command line tool. We use the -e or the --vars command line syntax. So for example, and again if we check back on CentOS 1, we have the MOTD that we've passed in as an extra variable. Step into revision 6. Lastly, we're going to look at handlers. Handlers follow the same syntax as tasks and are called from the task section through the use of the notify key within a task. Handlers are only executed once at the end of the tasks when there is a change. Here we have a handler that's using the debug module, which allows us to add debug context to our playbook. In the last revision, as we had previously executed the playbook with an environment variable, running it this time means a change will take place and we should see our debug output. And there we have the section running the handler, and the MOTD was changed. It's worth noticing here, if you look, the OK tasks is now 2, one for the change and one for the handler. And again, if we rerun this again, as there's no change, the handler isn't notified, and therefore we have no debug output, and OK equals 1. Go into revision 7. At the moment, our playbook is targeted at CentOS. We're going to change our playbook so that it covers both CentOS and Ubuntu. For this, we're going to make use of the task directives that I referred to earlier, in particular, the when directive. We're going to use information gathered during the setup facts process to make a decision on when to run a specific task. Firstly, let's take a look at the facts available on a CentOS system using the Ansible executable. And there's a lot of information here that you can look through. And this here, the Ansible_distribution is the fact we're interested in. Press Q to exit here. Let's rerun this, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to run this against the Ubuntu system as well. And we're going to see how this differs for both systems. Take away the pipe for more. Add in Ubuntu 2 here. And we'll grep for the Ansible distribution. Okay, so we can now use this in our playbooks to provide a specific MOTD for each of the systems. If we take a look at our playbook here, we've changed the target to the Linux group to cover both our CentOS and Ubuntu hosts. We've removed the user line so that we rely on our inventory where we have direct root connectivity for CentOS and sudo configured for the Ubuntu hosts. Finally, we've removed the gather_facts because we actually need the facts to be run so that we capture the information regarding the Ansible distribution. We've duplicated the tasks and we've created a custom task for CentOS and a custom task for Ubuntu. And you can see there within the content we're specifying an MOTD for CentOS and an MOTD for Ubuntu. And both of these are listed in the variables section. Now, if we execute our playbook, that's worked as expected. You can see when it actually run the MOTD for CentOS, it skipped the Ubuntu hosts. When it run the MOTD for Ubuntu, it skipped the CentOS hosts. Within our efforts, we've covered all sections apart from roles. To summarize, a role in Ansible is a way of associating variables, tasks, and handlers based on a grouping file structure. It often makes sense to restructure playbooks into roles for easy reuse. Therefore, with this in mind, we'll first learn about Ansible playbooks, how to create and execute them, and then we'll revisit the use of roles in the video section using roles. For now, let's go to our challenge to reaffirm the knowledge that we've learnt here. Ubuntu has this great feature that I really like for dynamic messages of the day. Essentially, you can create an executable file in a specific directory and it will be executed as part of the message of the day process. In the United Kingdom, where I'm from, we used to have a talking clock service by Accurist, which would say something along the lines of, "At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Accurist will be 15:01 and 30 seconds. Beep, beep, beep." We're going to create a playbook that configures our Ubuntu hosts with this feature. So firstly, go to the challenge directory, so back one directory and into challenge. You either want to create or copy the existing ansible.config file and our inventory from a previous revision. Once you have that, check that Ansible can ping your hosts as expected. Okay, great. Now, copy the template that we have from revision 1, the MOTD playbook. Update our playbook to target the Ubuntu group. From here, if we like, we can do a quick run against the playbook. It won't actually do anything at the moment apart from gathering facts. Okay, brilliant. So that's targeting the Ubuntu hosts. Next up, add a handler that will debug if there is a change. Again, if we run our playbook at this point, this should be the same as the previous iteration. Lastly, create a task that copies the file in the current directory 60-ansible-motd to the path /etc/update-mot.d/60-ansible-motd, i.e. the same file name. Use the option mode for copy to set the permissions to preserve. You may at this point need to look at the Ansible documentation for the copy module. An important thing to note there, remember to add a notify option to the task to inform the handler of changes. Okay, so if we edit our playbook again, and we want to add a task, and we add in our notify as well, and we save this, and now if we run our playbook, we can see there is copied our file 60-ansible-motd to etc update-motd.d, and the handler is executed because there's been a change. If we now log in to one of our Ubuntu hosts, it should show the dynamic motd. And there we have it. At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Ansible will be 12:57 and 39 seconds. I'm going to clean this up on my host here, and if you like, you can do the same. For convenience and to keep our skills shipshape and shiny, let's do this using the Ansible tool. And we want the state to be absent, i.e. remove the file. And we'll do this with the one-line option. Okay, brilliant. That's gone, and let's just run this again. Perfect, and we've got a green output reaffirming the same. Before closing this video, I strongly recommend looking over at the Ansible Playbook keywords. Whilst we've covered some of the major ones here, there's many keywords available, and having this resource bookmarked will prove useful. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please join me in the next video, Ansible Playbook Variables, where we will explore the different options for variables within Ansible.